Hello and welcome to a watchmaker's journey. Thank you very much for finding my channel. This is going to be the first video in a series of videos in which I'm going to restore a water damaged watch. Now, this journey is going to be very interesting. I do not know where it takes me, but I just want to know that I want to take you along. So make sure to subscribe and feel free to comment and like the video if you enjoy what you see. Now let's put our head towards the project itself. The project is about this watch. This is a Breitling Super Ocean chronograph which has received a lot of water damage, as you can see. We're just going to see how good we are able to restore the parts, how good we are able to bring the parts back to its old beauty, and how many parts we have to replace, because I'm assuming that I have to replace most of the parts, especially looking at the dial and hands. I'm not sure how well I'm able to save that. Now let's take a closer look. As we can see, the dial has suffered a lot of water damage. We can see the white lumen is just kind of flaking and crumbling off. Take a closer look there. The glass looks quite fine, but we can just see the white discoloring of the dial and the lumen just, being in places it really shouldn't be in. We're just going to see experiments how well we can restore the dial and hands, but in my mind at this point I'm already like, I need to replace these parts. Now, looking at the side of the case, it actually looks quite fine. The case itself still looks really good. Also, the diver bezel still rotates as it should, and it's meant to be in contact with water. The right side will tell us a bit more about how that all happens. As we can see here, the crown is missing, or the top crown of the screw down crown is missing. The previous owner forgot to unscrew there and jumped into the water, and water came in. I assume it was salt water damage, just looking at the dial, but I'm not quite sure. Now let's get to the interesting part and actually open up the case. You can see that this is actually a limited edition Breitling, making the project just a bit more fun. Now let's remove the case back and let's see what we have brought upon us. And there it is, the reveal, and it doesn't really look good. There's a lot of brown coloring on the rotor here. As you can see, the rotor has suffered a lot of oxidation and discoloring. We can see other steel parts here, and here, which have also suffered a lot. And we can see that the rhodium-coated plates look quite fine. The movement holding ring definitely also has a lot of brown coloring. Now the rotor itself, and we'll just bring you guys a bit closer and you can see the interesting color pattern. The rotor itself is made out of brass, which is coated in white rhodium, which should protect the part, and rhodium doesn't oxidize. So the brown coloring we see here should actually be removable. It's just deposited iron oxide on the outside. On the inside, of course, there's this big abomination of brown and black coloring. That's the steel bearing at the center, which really doesn't look good at all, and definitely has suffered a lot. Now I assume that the watch was laid down with the case back down, and the water is still in there, gathered at the bottom, and stayed there over time and did a lot of damage to the rotor. That's my theory to begin with. Now other steel parts like the click spring here, which goes down there to the ratchet wheel, and the minute counting spring here, they've also suffered. We're just going to see how well we can repair these parts. Let me just move the rotor aside and we can see more parts of the chronograph itself. We can see here the mounting pin here is rusted. It's going to be very interesting because that is in the train bridge plate. So let's see if we can clean that or remove or have to replace the part. We can see other steel parts like the screw here and here rusted. We can see here there's a screw head missing, meaning there is a piece of thread still stuck in there, maybe also rusted in there, so that's going to be a big problem to the end. This might actually happen with all the other screws you see. They might just be completely rusted and going to break off once we try to remove that. I'm just going to show you the rust out here on the steel ball bearing is just flaking off. So I'm not assuming that this is actually a rotor itself or the bearing itself. Just notice the crown wheel down here is also just completely rusted. I'm just going to assume that there is a lot of deposited iron oxide on there. Now let's start with the disassembly, and we're going to remove the back gasket. And the next thing we should do is push down on the setting lever pin here, and we normally should be able to remove the winding stem. Now I say normally because in this case it doesn't move at all. We can see the top part of the winding stem moving a bit, but that's not the winding stem itself. It's actually what's left of the outer part of the crown. Since it's a screw down crown, the top part is movable to screw it down and has normally a little spring in it, and when you unscrew the crown it just springs out a bit, and that's what moves here. So I'm just going to put my attention to the other parts we have to get rid of, so we're able to remove the movement out of the case, which are these 5 holding screws. There are 2 on the inside holding the movement inside the movement holding ring, and we have 3 on the outside which hold the movement holding ring inside the case. The first one comes out quite nice. It's always 2 parts, a screw and a bride, or a small plate basically. Now the second one also comes out nicely. The screws really didn't seem to be rusted in there. Also the screws are made out of steel, so that's what you should expect out of the parts. The second plate also comes out nicely. Those are the inner. Let's start with the 3 outer screws. They also come out nicely. That's the first one. Just remove that. You can also see that the screws and the steel plates you're going to see are just going to be identical from the 2 inside and the 3 outside ones. Now we're going to remove the second one, and we're just going to remove the third one. Now they all come out nicely and not seem to be stuck or rusted in. That's really, really good for us, of course. Now we're going to start to remove the 3 outer plates here. The first one comes out, which is a little bit of wiggle. They are really dirty. The second one, let me just move the rotor out of the way. Seems to be just a bit more stuck. I'm just trying to get my tweezers in there. I'm just going to switch to the steel tweezers, as the brass tweezers are just way too soft for that, and with a strong pull I'm actually able to get this one off also quite nicely. Now last but not least, we have one that doesn't seem to go out as easily. I'm trying to get my tweezers in the hole on the top left and top right and wiggle it, just to loosen it off the rust or dirt or whatever is holding the part in there. Still trying to get this one out, but it looks like we have found our second problem. The first one being the winding stem we're not able to remove, and the second one the last plate here not being able to loosen itself up. I'm just going to use a bit of a rough method of prying in there with a screwdriver, just trying to get it out, but sadly that also didn't help. So yeah, 2 problems we've encountered quite early, which we have to resolve quite quickly. I'm just going to put you a bit closer in here, and you can see how much rust there is, and you can see this interesting color pattern here on the spring here. But yeah, you can just see it just seems to be baked in there with rust. So I going to head back to the winding stem for now, pushing just a bit stronger on the setting lever and pulling on the winding stem with tweezers. that actually doesn't work as well, really putting force on there, but so far that did not do the trick. Let's think about the way we can resolve those issues. I'm just found out something there. I'm just gonna put you guys just a little bit closer as I spotted something inside there. I'm just gonna put it into focus here. You can just see that there's something completely stuck and wedged in there, and it's completely rusted through, and it just crumbles out. And yeah, I found these parts or these rusted parts around the case quite often on this project. So I'm just going to use a screwdriver, and I've did this all around the case, and with the vibrations, the final plate actually also comes out, and we have resolved our first issue by working on another spot, and the vibrations possibly just were enough to loosen up that part. Now, to remove the rotor, we're just going to remove the center screw here, the rotor screw, which I'm quite honest, I have no idea how that screw didn't just break off, seeing how much rust there is on this part. Now let's turn it around, and we can see that it actually looks quite fine on the bottom. Really surprised to see that this part, looking that horrible on the top side, looks so good on the downside, on the other side. I'm going to do a bit of a rougher approach on the winding stem here. I'm just going to hammer down on that winding stem, or on the setting lever which holds the winding stem in its place. I'm just going to put on some hammer punches and really push this one down. Pull with tweezers. I did this off camera on my lab as I were able to put in more force, and there we go. We were able to remove the winding stem. That's our second problem solved, and with those parts out, we should be able to remove the movement out of the case. We're just giving it slight taps on the bench there just to loosen it up, and with a small prying or small screwdriver, I was able to flick the movement out, and there we go. We have disassembled the movement out of the case. We can just see the dirt and the flaking of the lumen, and we can also see that the case itself rusted also on the inside. Now this is a stainless steel case, so the rust itself probably just on the surface, or it's just deposited iron oxide on there. The case itself shouldn't rust that extreme, so I'm quite optimistic that we will get rid of most of that. So let's take a closer look at the dial for a bit. We can just see the damage on there. I'm just going to remove the movement holding ring, which is still around the movement, and I'm able to pull it off quite nicely. I'm quite happy about that. This one also suffered a lot of damage. There are two extension pins in there for the pushes. The first one fell out. I'm just going to push the second one out, and that is it. This was the first part of this journey. I hope you enjoyed that. The next videos are already in the making, and I hope you will enjoy them as well. So we're going to see you. Until then, have a nice time. Bye.